"Get this woman out of my building, now." The voice wasn't loud. It was sharp, precise, like the snap of a trap shutting on prey. You turn your head, and there she is, Rebecca Sloan, the high-heeled queen of human resources, arm outstretched like she's pointing at a thief. Except the thief is a black woman in a tailored cream suit, her wedding ring catching the light from the glass atrium. She's holding a small gift bag, nothing more. And then, without hesitation, Rebecca twists the cap off a bottle of water. Cold liquid arcs through the air in slow motion. 16 ounces of insult. It smashes into the woman's face, drenching her hair, silk blouse, even the small silver-wrapped box in her hands. The marble lobby freezes. Phones rise like soldiers saluting. Someone whispers, "Did she just?" But the sentence dies halfway. The woman doesn't scream, doesn't lunge, doesn't even wipe her face. She just stands there, water streaming down, every inch of her screaming dignity. Her eyes, dark and steady, locked on the woman who just humiliated her in front of 20 witnesses. And Rebecca. She smiles. Smiles like she's just done her job. That's when you realize, you're not watching a random lobby altercation. You're watching a career commit slow, public suicide. Because the soaked woman in front of you isn't just anyone. She's the wife of the CEO. And in less than 30 minutes, this building is going to erupt. Not in water, but in firings. Before we get into how one reckless act turned an entire company upside down, before we unpack the hidden rot festering inside its polished glass walls, pause for a second. Ask yourself, have you ever seen someone so sure they were in control, only to find out they just destroyed themselves? That's the story you're about to hear. It's about arrogance. It's about prejudice. And it's about how one woman turned public humiliation into a corporate reckoning. Buckle up, because by the time we're done, you'll never look at a simple misunderstanding the same way again. Naomi Brooks hadn't planned to make an entrance. She'd driven her sleek black Lucid Air into Midtown Atlanta just after noon, gliding into the underground parking deck of Brooks Dynamics Tower like she'd done a dozen times before. The car's matte finish shimmered under the fluorescent lights, but it wasn't the vehicle that drew attention, it was the woman who stepped out. Naomi was striking without trying. Athletic build. Smooth mahogany skin. Hair pulled into a low, elegant twist. She wore a cream silk blouse and slate gray slacks that spoke of quiet confidence. In her left hand, she carried a small, insulated tote. Inside, packed carefully in glass containers, was Jordan's favorite lunch, Korean-style galbi, jasmine rice, and grilled asparagus. She'd been up since 5 a.m. marinating the short ribs, a ritual for their 7th anniversary. As she stepped into the glass-walled lobby, Naomi caught her reflection in the polished marble floor. She smiled faintly. Today wasn't about business. It was about surprising her husband between back-to-back meetings. The receptionist on duty, Lillian Gwynn, glanced up from her screen. Her fingers paused mid-keystroke. "Good afternoon. Do you have an appointment?" "Yes." Naomi Brooks. "It should be on the 12:15 schedule for the CEO." Naomi's voice was warm, steady. Lily checked her monitor, brows furrowing slightly as she scrolled. Before she could answer, the sharp click of heels echoed across the lobby. Victoria Hale emerged from the corridor like a storm front. Senior Operations Manager. Power suit in charcoal gray. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't greet Naomi, she assessed her, eyes traveling from hairline to shoes. "The executive floor doesn't take walk-ins," Victoria said flatly. "I'm not a walk-in. I'm..." "What's your business with Mr. Brooks?" The tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory. Naomi's smile thinned. "It's personal. Anniversary lunch." Victoria's lips curled, almost imperceptibly. "Personal," she repeated, as if tasting something unpleasant. She glanced at Lily. "Do you see her name on the VIP list?" Lily hesitated. "I think." "Exactly. So, ma'am, I'll need you to step aside." That's when Rick Dalton, head of security, walked by with his tablet. A quick glance at the visitor log made him pause. There it was in bold type, N. Brooks, 12:15 p.m., private anniversary lunch. His gut told him to speak up. But Victoria's glare was a warning in itself. Naomi held her ground, tote bag at her side, heartbeat steady. She had no idea that this was the moment, right here in the calm before the storm, when lines would be drawn, alliances tested, and careers quietly put on the clock. Victoria didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. With the authority of someone who had never been questioned, she stepped toward Naomi like she was clearing a trespasser from private property. "You can leave the building voluntarily," she said, her words crisp, "or I can have security escort you out." Naomi kept her tone even. "You can also call my husband. He's expecting me." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "That's not happening." She pivoted toward the small staff refrigerator behind the reception desk, pulled out a cold bottle of spring water, and twisted the cap. For a brief second, the room seemed to inhale, no one quite believing what was about to happen. And then it did. 16 ounces of chilled water arced into the air, glinting under the lobby skylights. It hit Naomi full in the face. The shock of the cold made her blink, but she didn't step back. Droplets streaked her blouse, ran down her arms, and darkened the cream silk to a translucent shadow. Gasps erupted. Someone muttered, "No way." Another whispered, "Is she crazy?" Phones came up. 1, 2, then nearly a dozen. In 2025, nothing that outrageous stayed private for long. Naomi straightened her shoulders. She didn't wipe her face. She didn't give them the satisfaction of a flinch. The silver anniversary wrap around the lunch container sagged from the water, but she kept it cradled in one hand like it was still worth delivering. Victoria smirked. "Now, out." Rick Dalton's jaw tightened. He could see the red blinking light on the security camera overhead, capturing every angle. Across the lobby, a young software engineer named Miles had already hit "Go Live" on his phone. Within 30 seconds, hundreds of strangers were watching in real time. The caption was blunt: "Manager dumps water on woman in Brooks Dynamics lobby." By the 1-minute mark, it had been shared to Instagram, TikTok, and 3 private Slack channels inside the company. The comments flew in. "Who is she? This is insane. Somebody's getting fired." Naomi finally spoke, voice calm but carrying across the marble and glass. "When my husband sees this, you'll understand exactly how wrong you are." Victoria laughed, dismissive. "Your husband doesn't run this building." Rick's gaze flicked to the private elevator behind Naomi. The one that only one man in the company could summon without a keycard. The one that, at that very moment, was beginning its silent descent from the top floor. And with every floor it passed, the fuse Victoria had lit was burning toward its explosion. The lobby was still humming from the shock of what had just happened when another voice cut through, a male voice, measured but firm. "Jordan," Naomi said softly, as her husband reached her side. Jordan Brooks didn't waste time demanding explanations. He saw the water, the cameras, the expressions on his employees' faces. He knew enough. But what he didn't yet realize was that this wasn't just an ugly incident, it was a symptom of something far deeper. From the back of the crowd, Omar Johnson stepped forward. He wasn't a high-ranking executive. He didn't have corner office authority. He was a recruiter. But in his hands, he carried a tablet, and on that tablet was a truth that had been festering under the surface for years. "Sue," Omar began, glancing at Naomi before looking back at Jordan. "You need to see this." Jordan took the tablet. The first screen was an internal email chain, marked "Confidential, HR Pre-Screen Protocol." It wasn't illegal on its face, just coded. Phrases like "ensure cultural alignment" and "watch for aggressive communication styles" were sprinkled throughout. But Omar didn't stop there. He tapped to the next document, a rejection note on a candidate named Marcus Hill. Bachelor's degree in computer science from Georgia Tech. 3 internships with Fortune 500 companies. Glowing recommendations. The note from HR was short, not a culture fit. Jordan's jaw tightened. Culture fit was supposed to mean shared values. In practice, he knew it was often a smokescreen. Omar scrolled. Another candidate. Then another. Avery King, MIT graduate, summa cum laude. Rejected after a single interview. Reason: tone may intimidate team members. In total, Omar had flagged dozens of these notes. Same patterns. Same language. And overwhelmingly, the candidates screamed out were people of color. Naomi's voice was steady but carried a weight. "This isn't about me, Jordan. This is about everyone who never made it past the first round because someone decided they didn't belong." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some employees shifted uncomfortably. Others, especially those who had suspected this for years, nodded subtly. Jordan looked at Omar. "How long have you had this?" "Months," Omar admitted. "But I didn't have the leverage to bring it forward. Now, you do." In that moment, the incident in the lobby transformed from a single act of humiliation into Exhibit A in a much bigger case. The water had been just the trigger. The real explosion was in the data. Jordan handed the tablet back, his expression unreadable. But the temperature in the room had shifted. The cameras were still rolling. And now, the story wasn't just about what Victoria had done. It was about what the company had allowed. Jordan didn't need to raise his voice. When he finally spoke, the weight behind his words was enough to make the room go still. "Victoria Hale," he said, his tone level but edged with steel, "you are terminated from Brooks Dynamics. Effective, immediately." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Victoria's smirk faltered. "You can't just." "I can. And I am." Jordan's eyes locked on hers. "You assaulted a guest in this building, humiliated her publicly, and obstructed verification of her identity. You didn't just violate company policy, you violated basic human decency." He nodded toward Rick Dalton. "Security will escort you out. Your badge access is revoked. Your company accounts are frozen." Victoria looked around as if expecting someone to step in. No one did. The same employees who once nodded politely in the hallway now kept their distance. Rick stepped forward, firm but not aggressive, and gestured toward the door. But Jordan wasn't finished. He turned to face the broader crowd, his voice carrying across the marble lobby. "Elaine Porter, Senior HR Director, and all senior recruiters under her chain of command, you are suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. You are not to access company systems, files, or communications until further notice." A stunned silence followed. Elaine, standing near the back, opened her mouth to protest, but Jordan didn't give her the chance. "I've seen enough to know this is not the work of one person. This was a system you were responsible for, and until we know exactly how deep it runs, you will not have access to the tools that allowed it to happen." Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones kept recording. The live stream count climbed into the thousands. Naomi stood beside him, silent but steady, her presence a reminder of why this was happening now. Omar lowered his eyes, knowing the risk he'd just taken was finally paying off. "This company bears my family name," Jordan continued, "and I will not allow it to stand for exclusion, bias, or arrogance disguised as professionalism. We will investigate, we will reform, and we will hold people accountable, at every level." The message was clear. This wasn't just about punishing a single offender. It was about tearing out the roots of a problem that had been allowed to grow unchecked. Victoria took one last glance around the lobby before Rick guided her toward the exit. The glass doors closed behind her, and in that instant, the air seemed to shift. Something had broken, but something else had begun. Jordan looked at Naomi. "Let's finish this." Naomi didn't waste the moment. With Victoria gone and the HR chain suspended, all eyes were on her. She set her tote bag on the edge of the reception desk, reached inside, and pulled out a slim black portfolio. Water still clung to her hairline, but her movements were deliberate, controlled. She opened the folder and laid out a series of printed charts and tables, each page protected in a clear sleeve. "This," she began, her voice steady but resonating in the lobby, "is not just about me. It's about hundreds of qualified candidates who never even got the chance to sit in these offices because someone decided they didn't belong." She slid the first chart toward Jordan. Over the past 18 months, Brooks Dynamics received 1,042 applications from black candidates who met or exceeded the listed job requirements. Out of those, 812 were rejected during the initial HR screening stage. The murmurs grew louder. Naomi tapped another sheet. "Compare that to white candidates in the same period. 1,587 applications, 421 initial rejections. That means qualified black candidates were screened out at nearly 3 times the rate of their white counterparts." Omar stepped closer, confirming quietly, "These numbers match what I've seen in the recruitment logs." Naomi continued, "This wasn't random. It's statistically impossible for this disparity to happen by chance alone. I partnered with the Equal Employment Opportunity Legal Center 3 months ago to analyze the data. They found a 0.004% probability that these results occurred without bias influencing the process." Jordan's jaw clenched, But Naomi wasn't done. She flipped to a section of anonymized case summaries. Candidate 2047, Ivy League graduate, bilingual, 4 years of industry experience. Rejected, reason given, not a cultural fit. Candidate 2273, Masters in Engineering, patent holder, led a team that saved their previous employer $2 million. Rejected, reason given, interview style may not blend with team. The words hung heavy in the air. Everyone understood what culture fit had been used to mean. Naomi straightened. This company's hiring practices weren't just flawed, they were discriminatory. And as of this morning, the Department of Justice has been formally notified. Agent Carla Mendez from the Civil Rights Division has already acknowledged receipt of our initial findings and is opening an investigation. The crowd was silent. Even the phones streaming the scene seemed to pause, as if the gravity of her words pulled everyone into stillness. Naomi glanced at Jordan. If we don't fix this now, it won't just be a lawsuit, it will be a legacy. Jordan gave a single nod. The battle in the lobby was over, but the war for the company's integrity had just begun. Jordan didn't hesitate. With the data still spread across the reception desk and the live streams rolling, he stepped forward, voice carrying through the glass and marble lobby like a gavel strike. Effective today, he said, we are implementing what I'm calling the Brooks package. This is not a press release. This is not a PR bandage. This is a permanent restructuring of how this company hires, promotes, and protects its people. He raised a hand, counting each measure. First, blind resume screening for every role in the company. Names, addresses, and any demographic identifiers will be removed before a hiring manager sees an application. The only thing that will matter is skill, experience, and potential. Second, he continued, all interview panels will include diverse members, not just in race, but in gender, background, and department. If we're making decisions that shape our future, those decisions will not be made in an echo chamber. Third, every quarter we will publish a diversity and equity report, publicly. You won't have to take my word for it. You'll see the numbers for yourself, and you'll hold us accountable. He took a step closer to the crowd. And fourth, we are establishing a $15 million equity and opportunity fund. This will support victims of workplace discrimination, fund paid internships from historically black colleges and universities, and invest in community partnerships that expand our talent pipeline. A ripple moved through the lobby. Even employees who had stood frozen minutes ago were now leaning in, sensing the scale of what was unfolding. This is not charity, Jordan said firmly. This is smart business. Diverse teams outperform homogeneous ones. They innovate faster. They understand broader markets. And they make us stronger. We will not just repair our foundation, we will build higher, better, and stronger than before. Naomi watched him, her lips pressing into a faint, proud smile. She had brought the evidence. He was bringing the muscle to turn it into change. And to ensure that no one fears speaking up, Jordan added, we are launching a 24/7 anonymous reporting line and appointing an independent ombuds office, co-led by Rick Dalton, our head of security. Every concern will be investigated. No retaliation will be tolerated. That's a promise from me, not a line in a handbook. The room was silent for a beat, then the applause began, not the hesitant, polite kind, but the kind that builds in waves, employees clapping because they believed what they just heard. For the first time that afternoon, the lobby didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like the start of something new. The Brooks package announcement spread faster than even the viral lobby video. By the next morning, news outlets were running split screens. On one side, the clip of Victoria Hale dumping water on Naomi. On the other, Jordan Brooks detailing sweeping reforms. But not everyone took it well. Victoria, now escorted out of the company and facing a public relations disaster, hired an attorney and began a media push. She claimed the video was taken out of context, that she had been protecting corporate security, and that she did not know Naomi was the CEO's wife. Her lawyer hinted at a wrongful termination lawsuit, alleging emotional distress from the public backlash. If Victoria thought public opinion would rally to her side, she miscalculated. The live stream footage had already been dissected in thousands of social media threads. Every dismissive glance, every cutting phrase, "You people don't belong here, culture fit, out," had been transcribed, time-stamped, and replayed. The attempted spin only deepened the damage. Meanwhile, the suspension of Elaine Porter and the senior HR team sent shockwaves through the leadership ranks. For some, it was a wake-up call. For others, a moment of deep reckoning. Elaine, who had been a fixture at Brooks Dynamics for over a decade, initially responded with cold silence. But within weeks, faced with mounting evidence, she issued a statement of her own, not through a lawyer, but directly to the company. She admitted to failing to challenge ingrained biases, and acknowledged that she had allowed efficiency metrics to overshadow equity. It wasn't a full exoneration, but it was a first step. Elaine voluntarily resigned from her role and later enrolled in a year-long diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership program. Some employees who had once looked away when bias occurred began stepping forward. Lillian Gwynn, the receptionist who had hesitated that afternoon, formally joined the new equity committee. Omar Johnson, the recruiter who risked speaking up, was promoted to lead recruitment reform initiatives. And Rick Dalton, the head of security who stood frozen in that first moment, became one of the most vocal advocates for the anonymous reporting system, using his own hesitation as an example of why bystander training mattered. For Victoria, redemption wasn't immediate. She lost the lawsuit, and with her reputation in ruins, she struggled to find another corporate role. It took over a year before she found work at a nonprofit focused on workplace bias education, an irony not lost on anyone following the story. Redemption didn't mean erasing the harm. It meant facing it, learning from it, and building something better in its place. And inside Brooks Dynamics, the shift from damage control to true cultural change was just beginning to take root. 90 days after the Brooks package went into effect, the numbers told a story even the skeptics couldn't ignore. Jordan stood at the head of the executive conference table, flanked by Naomi and Omar. On the wall behind them, a screen displayed charts that would soon be included in the company's first public diversity and equity report. "Let's start with recruitment," Naomi said, her voice steady. Black and Hispanic candidates now advance past the initial screening at 3 times the rate they did 6 months ago. Women in technical roles have increased by 180%. And for the first time in company history, our intern class is 50% sourced from historically black colleges and universities. The room was quiet, but the energy was different now, less defensive, more curious. Jordan took over. On performance metrics, diverse teams are outperforming homogeneous teams by 21% in project revenue and 28% in customer satisfaction scores. Employee retention is up 35%, saving us millions in recruitment and onboarding costs. Daniel Whitaker, the CFO, leaned forward. "We've also seen a boost in innovation output. Diverse project teams filed 32% more patent applications this quarter compared to the same time last year." It wasn't just internal metrics. Externally, Brooks Dynamics was being noticed. Industry publications were covering the reforms as a model for systemic change. The company had landed 2 major contracts with clients who cited the public equity report as a deciding factor in their choice. "This is what happens when equity isn't treated as charity," Naomi added. "It becomes a competitive advantage." The cultural shift inside the company was just as telling. The anonymous reporting line had logged 47 incidents in its first month, everything from microaggressions to questionable hiring decisions, and each was addressed within 72 hours. Employees who once stayed silent were now speaking up, confident they'd be heard without retaliation. Rick Dalton, in his new role co-leading the Ombuds office, had turned his own hesitation in the lobby into a training module on bystander intervention. "We've already run the training for 2/3 of our managers," he said. "And you can feel the difference in day-to-day interactions." Jordan looked around the table. "This is the direction we're going. These aren't temporary fixes. They're the new foundation of how we operate. And the market is responding." The board members nodded. For once, the numbers and the narrative aligned. Brooks Dynamics wasn't just recovering from a scandal, it was outpacing its competition because of how it chose to respond. By the end of the first year, the Brooks package was no longer just a company policy, it had become an industry benchmark. It started quietly. A mid-sized software firm in Charlotte announced its own blind hiring system, citing Brooks Dynamics as the inspiration. 2 weeks later, a national logistics company rolled out a diversity audit program modeled directly on Brooks' quarterly reports. Then came the statement from a Fortune 100 corporation, pledging to adopt Brooks standard reforms in their global offices. The momentum didn't stop there. Trade associations began hosting panels on equitable hiring, and Naomi was invited to speak at 3 of them. She didn't just share the policies, they could have copied those from a press release. She told this story: the lobby, the water, the humiliation, and the decision to turn that moment into systemic change. It's not about avoiding bad press, she told a room of senior executives at the National Business Ethics Conference. It's about building a culture where that kind of press never has to exist in the first place. The message resonated. Within months, 10 major companies, 6 of them in the tech sector, had signed the Brooks Pledge, a public commitment to blind screening, diverse hiring panels, transparent reporting, and zero tolerance for retaliation against whistleblowers. Even government agencies took notice. The Department of Labor issued new guidelines encouraging contractors to implement practices similar to the Brooks package to maintain federal eligibility. Harvard Business Review published a case study titled From Scandal to Standard, The Brooks Dynamics Turnaround, and it became one of their most read pieces of the year. Inside Brooks Dynamics, the ripple effect had a reinforcing loop. As more companies adopted similar reforms, the talent pool widened, and collaboration between organizations grew. Joint internship programs with partner companies meant that candidates from underrepresented backgrounds had access to multiple career paths at once. For Naomi, the impact went beyond metrics. She started receiving emails from people in industries she had never worked in: construction foremen, hospital administrators, even a professional sports franchise owner, asking how they could bring the Brooks approach into their own hiring and promotion systems. "It's strange," she told Jordan one evening, "to think that a bottle of water and a few seconds of arrogance could be the catalyst for this. But maybe that's how change works. It doesn't always start with a plan. It starts with a moment you can't ignore." And in boardrooms, conference halls, and HR departments across the country, that moment was still echoing, pushing others to choose reform before scandal forced their hand. Looking back, the Brooks Dynamics story was never just about corporate policy. It was about human choice, those pivotal seconds when you decide whether to look away or speak up. For Naomi, the lesson was simple but heavy. Silence protects the wrong people. If she had left that lobby without saying a word, the bias buried in a company's hiring system might have stayed hidden for years. For Jordan, it was about the weight of leadership. His title gave him the authority to fire people and sign off on multi-million-dollar initiatives, but in that moment, authority meant accountability. Leadership wasn't measured by how he handled success, it was defined by how he handled injustice in plain sight. For Omar, Lily, and Rick, the lesson was about bystander power. Each of them had a choice that day: intervene, hesitate, or walk away. And while not everyone acted instantly, each found a way to step forward eventually. That step mattered. From this story, there are clear applications for everyday life. First, document everything. Whether it's an email, a note, or a video, evidence can be the bridge between allegation and accountability. Second, practice deliberate calm. Naomi's refusal to lash out in the lobby gave her story credibility and focus. Composure doesn't mean weakness, it can be the most powerful form of strength. Third, turn moments into movements. Jordan could have fired Victoria, made a brief statement, and moved on. Instead, he built a structural reform that outlasted the incident and expanded far beyond the company's walls. Fourth, hold people and systems accountable. Bias doesn't just live in individual behavior, it thrives in unchecked processes. Question those processes, even if they've always been done that way. Finally, understand that redemption is possible, but it starts with acknowledgement. For some, like Elaine, that meant admitting failure and learning. For others, like Victoria, it meant a much longer road. The Brooks Dynamics turnaround is proof that a single public failure can become a blueprint for lasting change, if the people involved choose courage over convenience. And now, the question turns to you. If you witnessed a moment of bias, humiliation, or exclusion, at work, in public, even among friends, would you act? Would you speak? Would you document? Or would you walk away, telling yourself it's not your fight? Your answer could be the difference between a quiet injustice and a catalyst for change. So here's my challenge. Share your story. Comment with a moment you wish you had spoken up, or the time you did. Like this video if you believe silence should never protect discrimination. And subscribe if you want more real stories that remind us all. Change isn't just possible, it's our responsibility. Because the next Brooks Dynamics moment could happen anywhere. And when it does, the world will need people ready to turn it into more than just a headline.